In my early childhood, I was the only blonde in my family. And if you look at family photos, you'll see my dad and my two brothers were sort of dressed to match, and my sister was usually dressed to match my mum. So I actually developed this theory when I was 5 years old that I was an alien sent to observe my family. And I think a lot of people feel like aliens and feel alienated, but it created, I believe, in me a sense of being okay with being an individual.
He may not have come to us from another world, but Andrew Adamson has travelled light years from Blockhouse Bay. He broke through in Los Angeles with a tetchy ogre named Shrek, brought the Narnia films to New Zealand, came home to adapt Mr. Pip, and has just captured Cirque du Soleil in 3D. He's an Oscar nominee, and his films have thrilled critics and broken box office records. Andrew's start came after a car crash in Papua New Guinea, where he spent his teenage years. He arrived home on a gurney, missed enrolling in architecture, and applied instead for a job in computer animation.
And I said, look, I haven't had any formal graphic art training. Can I bring my school portfolio? And the guy that ran the Mouse Lord, Philip Morgan, said, no, not really. I'm looking for people with graphic arts training. And I was kind of bummed, and I moped around the house for a while, and my mother sort of said, you know, why don't you just call them back and see if you can see what they do?
He got hired and ended up in Los Angeles supervising visual effects on Batman movies. Then he was asked to co-direct an animation about a big green guy.
Had Shrek not succeeded, it would have been quite a disastrous waste of 4.5 years. But it was lucky that once that film had done that, you know, a lot of doors were then opened. And they continue to open quite often based on Shrek.
Andrew's work on Shrek and its sequel gave him the chance to adapt the C.S. Lewis fantasy The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and the clout to bring the Narnia films to New Zealand, despite a lack of incentives and some anxious studios.
When you're making films that are upward of $200 million, there's a lot of very concerned people, and yet they're effectively betting on a horse.
And with digital technology tearing the business model apart, it's hard to make even little films like Bougainville Uprising story Mr. Pip. Andrew says a recent injection of government incentives has helped. But our tertiary institutions annually pump thousands more graduates into an industry that last year struggled to survive.
And we put a huge amount of money into the World Cup. We put a huge amount of money into sailing, because those things are exporting in New Zealand. But I don't believe anything has shown our creative capability, our landscapes, our technological ability as much as the films we've exported. And I think we need to look at film as a national identity, not purely as a business.
Andrew says while our crews are world class, we need to do better with the directors and writers who create the jobs. So he's now talking with others about just how to do that.
To be able to upskill them, to be able to put them in touch with the right people. We're very thin on writers in New Zealand. So if we can get young creative directors and team them with good international writers, then hopefully we can bring the level of production up, attract budgets from overseas, and then create projects for TV, games, film that are exportable.